And now we're at the top of the hour, so I'm going to introduce Boris, who's going to be talking about modernizing New York City's radio news. So without further ado, take it away, Boris.
All right. Hi, guys. My name is Boris. Let me just get this going. And I'll be talking about some of the work we did for iHeartMedia. This was a couple of years ago, so I had to go back and retrace some steps and figure out some of the things. So a little bit background. I have been doing Drupal since about 2005. My original design is actually, my original background is in design and visual arts, but I kind of moved slowly over the years from kind of right brain front end art kind of things into more and more back end, and I've been trying to balance it out. I have worked for a number of organizations, Metropolitan Museum of Art, NYC Langone, iHeart, did recently a little work for NJ Transit, not for them specifically, but for a project for their new site. And I do a lot of consulting, so that's how I generally tend to work at one company to another. So moving on. All right. So yeah, this is just a little slide just to say I'm gonna try and tackle it. Just kind of where, what, when, and how. Just as a reminder, there's not much here. Right. So. I think this is kind of an interesting part of it. So this was not the first project we were doing at iHeartMedia. I think that was probably fourth. And the background of the situation there is that they entered a contract with Acquia, and Acquia sold them onto their AWS on-site factory products. So out of that, well, it's a very robust and powerful product for enterprise. For them, it was kind of interesting combinations because they didn't really have internal Drupal talent, and not to mention that ACSF. I think this must have been like their first Drupal 8 client on ACSF. So as we were getting into that, there was a lot of kind of things, a lot of trying to figure out how to make things work. Drupal 8 was still kind of very new. I probably was working for about a year at that point. And another thing was BLT. If people are familiar, it's the build tests, framework that Acquia, now it's pretty commonplace. It was kind of brand new then. I remember calling kind of support or talking to support at Acquia and being like, yeah, we're trying to use BLT. And that was recommended by an engineer, and be like, what is BLT? So there were some comical situations like that. So there's a little background. So before this project, we did a number of things, kind of get acclimated there. There was a Premier Prep, which is like a giant content repository that radio stations use for like trivia data. That was a whole project unto itself. We migrated some smaller sites like Premier Networks that has all the personalities like Rush Limbaugh and other radio personalities on there. We migrated that from SharePoint to Drupal 8. So thankfully, and I've done a lot of Drupal 7 at that point, but I was getting my feet wet with that. We did some better suited sites for ACSF, like the X of the Week, where it was a very simple site that spun up from the profile for specific locality, if you want, of their market zones. And we also did a site for them, which was content like a lead generation content distribution platform. I think we kind of rebuilt maybe Acquia Lift a little bit. I haven't worked with Acquia Lift actually, but It was something along those lines. So why Drupal? I think iHeart is a giant. It was actually iHeart Media, which is the parent organization, and they own the iHeart, the radio stations, and they also own Clear Channel Outdoors. I mean, they had some financial wrangling recently, but so because of that, they buy radio stations, they buy other companies that enter with their own kind of set of tools, and sometimes they kind of promote it to the larger organizations. Sometimes they kind of take one tool and adapt it to other places. But there's a lot of repeating stuff, many ways to do things. It's obvious. And Drupal kind of was the opportunity, and the idea and the vision was that we build some of these tools in Drupal, like authentication mechanism for like SAML authentication, or a way to get our radio stations list, or get our markets. They have, I think, 150 or something markets, which is, there's New York, there's Philadelphia, there's Texas, and then they're also divided on regions and things like that, and they serve in different places. So it was kind of the idea to create consistent ways for them, and that's why the product they got from Apple was ACSF, and we actually helped to build some of these elements. And now TTWN was one of the, I think it was the last actual project we did there, and you see a little screenshot there. It looks like it could be from Windows 3.1 or 98. I thought it was very interesting. There's a lot of kind of elements to the project that were fascinating to me, because I don't know much about how giant radio networks or how the news are propagated works, and I think that was one of the most exciting things about the project. There's a lot of legacy stuff, like you see this app, the color buttons, there's the categories, there's the format in which the radio stations, the reporters write these stories, and they kind of post them on this wire that gets aggregated. I probably am gonna mention it a little bit further. That is the network. Then there is stations, users, networks. There's the sales teams. So there's a lot of coordination that happens. And then there was element of people been using this app that was made years ago, but it's kind of idiosyncratic and it has its own things, but people have been using it for a long time, and some people frankly didn't want it to go away. I wasn't the one picking some of those fights, so I was just going with the flow. It was made easier for me, thankfully. And there was some surprisingly old hardware involved in some parts of it, and that was surprising, because when we were building it, it runs well, even though there are some really old computers there. So the big thing was this ANPA format. I have quote there. I don't know if I could read it right off the slide. So it's standard format, I guess, that people in the news probably know about. The gray part there underneath is the what it looks like when you open one of those files in the like an editor, like a Sublime Text or something. It has like carriage return type special teletype. It was developed for teletype, and it's been around for a very long time. And it has all these symbols in it and characters that, people who write it, they just write them. They don't, as far as I understand it, it's not like they have a tool that they're using. They just open Notepad and type all that stuff in, and it's automatic. And it was interesting because when we had to go and write modules to kind of interpret this. It took some doing to actually go and figure out, because some people like, yeah, this is what we always use, but we don't know what these characters mean. Yeah, so some highlights, special characters, difficult to sort through for some of us. Some of these stories that come in the format were also, they had audios attached with them. So I think I have a slide. Yes, so the way the whole system worked, again, my knowledge of it was fairly limited, as fascinated as I was with it. So apparently there's like a network of fairly antiquated computers all over US. And people go in those rooms and they write the stories and they submit, and then they save the file, and somehow that gets kind of FTP'd to some server somewhere, and it shows up on the wire, what they call, and it's called link source or something like that. So this is like constant flow. So every, I don't know, 5-15 minutes, there's new stories getting uploaded. And then radio hosts had access to various interfaces to that wire to basically consume this, news. And another element that goes into it is building kind of modernized version of interface to this newswire. There is sales reps that are calling radio stations, I guess, to sell access. I was kind of remote from some of these things, so if you ask me questions, I might be able to answer, but I can't guarantee it. So newswire content import was the big part of it. Once we could figure out how the format operated, which was one of the challenges, I think, I remember going for like days kind of waiting to figure out what one of those letters in the format meant, or they use special kind of shorthand to signify certain things. Like you have a opening print and then a couple of letters, and then we need to know how we're going to turn that into a category, or something else, or is it indication that it's a local story or global or developing? So there was a lot of variables, and then we had to figure out the mechanism to how this would work. So we were talking to the stakeholders, and kind of I was several degrees removed from some of these people, so it was trying to come together and figure out how we're actually going to make that work, this software. And I think one difficulty was, I'm not sure if I have it in one of the slides, but as we were developing it, the wire had to run, and the protocol is eventually meant to replace that system with the new one that runs in the browser, is responsible for the access on the phones. But there was a fair amount of time of kind of overlay. So while we developed it, it had to work in sync. So we couldn't just like rebuild it. What we were doing is kind of like injecting, not injecting, but kind of siphoning off these news stories and putting them into more accessible interface, more or less. Yes, stories from the wire had, there's categories, there is developing news, there's some breaking news. They're broken down by locality. Some of them, there's by state, and a few other. Also, some of them, I don't remember if they had images, but some of them definitely had audio. So one of the things was, so it's coming, as we're updating this, it's coming from a place where people were using essentially a desktop app. And obviously in a desktop app, everything is easier to do, right? Because we have kind of to the core integration. So they could just edit text, they could edit audio right in the app, and kind of consumption and the interaction was very close. and we kind of had to strip some of this down. Another issue we had is that when news hosts prepare the stories for their show, like I have a 10 o'clock slot or something, often they want to take the story and they want to edit it and save it. And not only that, it might be actually not them, but somebody else in the station might be preparing it and another person is doing it. So a story editor was one part of it, where they make adjustments and it doesn't go back to the wire. It stays a localized story. So we had to find a way to grab a story as soon as it's modified and make it kind of a shareable content. Yes, we had a requirement to add audio editor, but it just wasn't possible to make it happen. Did research, had some leads. It was exciting if we could have done it, but ultimately we were not able to. So in the end, there was basically two user levels that the sales will call whomever, sell them on the account. One account created, that's the admin account, and that's kind of a station main account. And then they will go based on the number of users, or however they will create sub accounts, and those become station users. So I could be a person looking at the stories, another person could be putting them in, and maybe a host in his slot would actually go and read the generated, they called it rundown. I think this only mentions a few content from, I'm kind of switching rather quickly here to Drupal perspective. So as content tabs, I think there were a few more things there, but basically that was the story, which is coming from the wire. They were basically just imported and kind of kept. The local stories, if I start editing on those stories, it immediately creates basically my local copy that is shared in the station, but it's not saved back. And hopefully I'll have a chance to show you. I actually got in touch with some of the people and they let me have a demo account, so hopefully I could show it. The news rundown, I think it changed names. We called it rundown, it was newscast. I think now it's called a script. Essentially what happens is a person grabs the stories and they kind of drag and drop them and edit and put things around in their script in preparation of that's what they're going to read on the air. And that was called rundown. There was a lot of iterations around that specific rundown. So again, one thing was importing users. Essentially, we had to figure out how this was going to happen, and we kind of, I don't remember how it came about, but essentially we said, okay, can you take, I think it was coming from SalesForce, and say, can you basically come generate, I said, let's use simple queue service from Amazon, and they basically would, every time they register a user or there was a change, they would push it in. And then we used Composer package for that. I don't remember specifically, but essentially we would, to maintain, kind of make sure we confirm that this user was created or deleted or updated based on subscription level. And then Drupal would build custom module that would basically run on cron and do that processing and kind of assign, reassign, and create users as needed. One big thing was, I thought, that challenge of how do we do it that content is kind of automatically shared within a station. And we looked at Drupal 8 groups, which was brand new. I had experience with like organic groups and other and forums kind of things in previous versions of Drupal, but this was new and it was dramatically different. But this is what we ended up using, and I thought that was kind of awesome the way it worked. It's kind of almost went with that idea that when I edit story, it needs to basically create a local copy. But there were, I remember being some hiccups. There were still things not working. We kind of had to write some extra parts of it to really make it work. But essentially, that what handled that whole part of being able to share the content and level of access for all the people in the station. Technology choices. Yeah, I think I was actually talking to one of the developers yesterday, and he said it's actually very different now. I think we started with kind of combination, almost like it started as being as much in Drupal as possible, and then we kind of stripped away parts of it to make it more responsive and customized. Switched a lot of the stuff to JSON API and web services, and basically it was just sending JSON to the front end, and then it was getting lots of JavaScript, doing all kinds of stuff. There was drag and drop. There was a lot of script, like stripping characters and things like that. I said React, but I think it was actually initially a Vue app. And now, as far as I understand, it's basically just almost plain JavaScript and whole lot of API access to the back end. Custom editor for story, which I think we started with WYSIWYG, but it ended up being just completely almost, completely different. It's not like you would bold things, but it would be like I'm not sure we could look at it, but you would click on just the story and it become like an editable area, and then you would edit it. So it was kind of, there was no like save button. You just, as soon as you edit it, it becomes yours instead. I guess I covered groups already. Technologies, again, there was a SalesForce involved. There was a Amazon Simple Queue. There was S3 for storing. So once we started working with the wire, essentially they added somewhere a process that would copy all the stories that come in from the wire and save them as files into S3 bucket. And I don't remember how many, but a lot of them just go in all the time there. And some stories come with audio, so the audio also went in into S3. And while stories, once we process them, they eventually get kind of expired. Where with audio, they actually stay there because they need to be accessible if people even downloaded the story content into their local environment. Things like that. So Drupal 8, again, it's not React, it's Vue. In the recent version, a lot of stuff apparently happens in the local storage while you're working inside the app. So again, it's JavaScript, but it's basically while you're working, dragging storage around and doing stuff, it kind of saving it. And then once you're done and you save it, it sends it back to Drupal, and then it's accessible again. I mentioned ACSF here because Acquia, what they bought is ACSF, side factory product. But I think for this specific project, that wasn't really the best technology, because ACSF, I think, works best if you have 100 stores and you want to make a store that is more or less the same for every store. You want to make a website, or you have a localized kind of by locations, and so you're basically making same thing a bunch of times. But this was so unique that almost, it was it just kind of impeded some of the efforts, because deploying on the ACSF, it impacts everything else that's on there. And I believe now it just runs on cloud, not on the ACSF anymore. Some of the application features, I think I cover a lot of them. There is important the audio, there is important the stories, important users from the SalesForce, and kind of creating groups. Managing access, that was also fairly challenging. One of the previous projects we were doing, it was like a 500 gigabyte media and stories import that when we imported it and had to apply access, we couldn't really use Drupal, recalculate permissions thing, because it would just run for 3 days. And as I remember, even Akwe told us, like, you won't be able to do that. So in that situation, we solved it by switching to, we actually did a lot of, it was using Solr to kind of get the stories, and we did some Solr query alter kind of things to say, depending on my level of access, I only get these things returned to me from the back end. So here, I think it was similar. I don't remember exactly, to be honest, how we ended up doing it, but that was one of the things, is kind of managing access, making sure that if I signed up for only these things, like maybe only New York news and then global, that I don't see news in Texas. Creating local stories, that was another thing. The drag and drop UI, I remember we had like a couple of weeks of discussions with the people, I think they were in Texas, maybe. With people who were kind of the project owners on the iHeart end. We had a couple of weeks of discovery, and I remember going through it, and they were saying, like, people really loved their colored buttons in that screenshots. And I remember doing initial, prototypes. They were like, we want those colored buttons. But also when you're on the desktop, everything is kind of drag and drop by default, and that's so. I think that was one of the kind of things we had to do, and one of the challenges as well, to make sure it stayed that way. Challenges and difficulties. Excuse me. The timeline, as I remember, we started talking about this project while we were doing other projects. So we had some time to think about it, and I kind of already had planned, worked out in my head as to kind of what technology choices we could use. So by the time we got, because we kind of got wind of it because of the group we were working with, but we only had about 3 months, I think, with even less time for development to actually make this happen before we kind of, our part of it was done and we're rolling off. Another challenge was getting all the information on that news format. That was definitely, I remember just trying to figure out what all those word characters meant. That was that was a big thing, and then making it work, in an acceptable way. Integration with SalesForce and AWS. We did not have a lot of interaction with it. We kind of just got, like, here are the feeds, and we kind of, it was by proxy. We said here is the queue that you're going to push things into, and then we basically just consume that to make it work. S3 storage. Yeah, UI choices, I think I talked about them a little bit already. It was a lot of back and forth, and some of it was like having people say, okay, I will be okay with it looking different as long as it still works the way I want and it's still better. I think one of the big challenges was definitely the fact that Drupal 8 was really super brand new. There was a lot of things still in beta. A lot of modules weren't quite there at the time we were building this. Yeah, and selling users on the new UI. How are we doing on time? Okay. Okay, so this is. Sorry. This is what essentially the app looks like now. And if you want, let me see, do I have any more slides here? Okay, I guess talk about it in a minute. Yeah, so to give you a quick walkthrough, is it cut off at the top? It's a little cut off, so I'll switch later. But basically, this is the news wire. These stories here on the left, they're constantly updating. It's literally like every couple of seconds, you see it moving up. Those little red dots, it kind of tell you what kind of story it is, whether it's global, local, breaking, things like that. You could see some access here, the wire, the shared stories, and my stories. I guess you could move between. I don't remember exactly how this worked. And you could filter. There are some built-in. The filtering actually was another big part of it, and hopefully I could show in the UI. So you could search for stories as well. The editor part of it was here in the middle initially, but I think now everything is kind of on the right side. So you click on the story, with load, you could play the audio. And when we were talking about making like web audio editor, that was the idea, that we would be also able to like clip part of this audio. And I tried to find a way to do it, but it was just, the technology was not there. I wonder if it would be possible today. This was only a couple of years ago also. And then we have the script editor. There was a lot of iterations that happened there, as I remember, because essentially at first they kind of want you drag these stories from one side to the other and you drop them, and you had a couple of time slots, because I might have like a 10 o'clock show and then one is at 12:30 and one might be shorter to the other. So we actually did we changed a lot of things there several times to kind of play with that idea. But I think in the end, there is a lot of magic. And I was talking to a developer who kind of is the front-end architect in this now. He said, I call it my magic box now. So when you like click add things to script, there's a lot of stuff happens, and there's a lot of hidden stuff, and stripping of the content and kind of maintains order. There are a few other bells and whistles that hopefully could show in a minute, like it in the profile you actually set, because this is targeted to people who are going to be creating shows. So as I'm creating a show, I kind of want to gauge how long each story is going to tell me to say in the air. So on the user profile, you actually specify what is my words per minute talking speed, I guess. And as you drag these stories, I don't know why we can't see it. This screenshot didn't come out, sorry, quite right. But there's actually at the bottom, it's telling you the whole length of what you put in this magic box, of how based on your specific words per minute count. And then there was other things like share buttons. You could go full screen editing. I don't know. Some of these were probably added after we kind of rolled off. And I mentioned a few more things here. One thing was that they were really adamant about is like this breaking story that had to appear at the top. I mean, this year that would have been interesting to see what these breaking stories would be. There's like one story at the top if it's smart. Like they don't happen a lot, I guess. Like if there's a hurricane and it's big news or something, or maybe Amber Alert, I don't know, it kind of shows up. There was weather is always on the interface screen there. There's category indicators. These are kind of different things in which the stories can appear. Audio player, and then custom filters. So for some users, I want to create something that gives me a specific. It's like the ad hoc filtering kind of. I know that there's a specific group of kind of filters that I always look at, and I want to grab it. And save that as categories in their profile, and in the interface you're actually able to do that, and then you could click on that and it kind of remember and take you there. And I mentioned the word count. So thank you. That's kind of end of the slides. I could certainly show at least try to show the app. Let's see. Actually go from demo time. All right, it's open. One second. It's a little tricky here getting it to the screen. There we go. So there it is. I guess now it also offers notifications. Here you could see the stories. You could actually see the timer going here, and it tells you when it's updated last. So if you're looking for the stories, they're constantly coming in and getting updated. These dots match some of these categories, and there's also subcategories, and all that gets figured out from that little format that I was showing. It's like a box, and it was just like mind-blowing to me that people just went and they didn't have like a card that tells them how to tag it. They just do it day to day, and they know how to bunch of special characters into categorize the story. I guess it's not really surprising, but I was like, this is cool to have a to glean. Am I still sharing? Oh. Oh, yes, I am. Sorry. I had a little confusion here. So, yeah, where was I? Yeah, so here's you can see, I think it gives you the time, and there's weather. These are the breaking stories. And if you click it, I guess it puts you right in the story. This used to be an editor here, and as I said, now if I click add to script, it just takes it, it puts it in here, and then you could basically go and just edit parts of it out. Right, you could say that I don't want these three things, but I want the last audio. And I'm not sure what it's doing. I guess maybe there's a lot more audios. Yeah, so there's a lot of them. So maybe you want to say I want to just have two of them. And what this is doing is this is generating, when I go on the air, I'm going to be talking about all these things. So it's about making choices, and there's a meaning behind those two, greater than signs that I no longer remember what I was doing, but you could see here if I delete the sentence, this will update the time, the total, talk time of this, talk. And there's some sharing features, custom filters. I could click this and basically create any combination of filters I would like to create that special filter, and then it's just going to be on the left. So this add to script is what adds it to the script, and then they could download. That's pretty much covers it. My stories. Again, I actually, as I was preparing for this talk, I was trying to get in touch with folks who were in the project with, and who are still there, and see if I could actually get some access. And I didn't have a whole lot of time to play around with it again. There's two apps now. This is largely talking to, it's responsive, and it's largely talking through API calls and just like grabbing stuff and sending back. So it's headless basically, and it's mostly just JavaScript and JSON. They have 2 apps. There's a responsive version as well. I don't know if I could find it. I probably can't. But there's also like a responsive mobile read-only version if I just want to read the stories from the wire on the go. I think this probably also works on the mobile, but I think I guess they had a use for the mobile version. So that about covers it. I could stop here. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I'll hang out here for a minute, and also I will be hanging out in the Esteemed booth after that for a little while if you want to come talk to me. I'm just going to close this. Sorry. And thank you. And thank you to Esteemed for encouraging me to do this and doing this talk and facilitating. So thank you very much for sponsorship. And thank you for everybody who made this DrupalCamp possible also. I'll hang out a couple of minutes in case anybody has questions. Honestly, I think I wasn't really involved in part of that decision making, but I think it was kind of overall strategy. I know it came into talks several times. Either was forms that were integrated into the site. So I think that was like a company-wide strategy to integrate SalesForce into their sales process. And I know that one of the other projects we did was the lead gen site, and that was like the big part of it. Is you have this? They have 150 markets, I think, or somewhere close to 300 markets across US that they kind of cater to, and you had this form that went, and that was one that identifies as the market that they cater to. So I think in that situation, probably, SalesForce works well. All right, we got a couple more minutes here. You're welcome. Thank you for coming, everybody.
Thanks, Boris, so much.
I guess I could stop sharing now, right?
Yep. Thank you.
Bye.